From the hospital to the stage, Clevelander Barbara Barrett has stories to tell. Her musical journey has taken her from opera to world music and many places in between. She's next on Open Door Cleveland with Vince Robinson. Welcome to Open Door Cleveland. I'm Vince Robinson, and I am talking to Barbara Barrett, who wears many hats. Amongst them, she is an author, she's a singer, she is a school nurse, and she does a number of other things that we will probably uncover in our conversation today. Welcome to Open Door.
Thank you very much. Thank you much.
I'm glad to have this conversation with you. You know, I've seen you over the years several times. I know that you are involved in arts and culture in Cleveland, and we've crossed paths a few times. But I'm always happy to have these conversations because it gives me and it gives our listeners a chance to know who we're talking to. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Did you grow up in Cleveland?
I did. I grew up in Cleveland, attended Cleveland public schools, and still am in Cleveland.
Okay. So obviously you got that nursing degree, so that means that you went to college. Was it somewhere around here, or did you venture out of state?
Well, now, here's kind of how that happened. I had gone to the University of Cincinnati to get a degree in music education, which I really would have preferred it to be music performance, but that's a whole long story. So I got the degree, but when I did my student teaching, I realized that was not for me. So before my senior year was over, I had gone across campus to the neighboring hospital and applied to nursing school, which I got accepted. And then basically my parents told me to come home because I didn't know what I was doing, which I didn't. I didn't know where I was going to stay. I just knew I was not going to teach music. So when I came back to Cleveland, I had to work somewhere. So I started working, and I ultimately ended up going to St. Vincent Charity Hospital for my nursing diploma, which is what I got for nursing, is my nursing diploma and then the bachelor's in education that I had gotten from University of Cincinnati.
Okay, so I got to rewind a little bit because I omitted the neighborhood. Did you grow up in the same neighborhood, or were you in different places in the city as you grew up?
No, I grew up from kindergarten through, oh good grief, through college. I was in Lee Harvard. I attended JFK. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Mm-hmm. All right. The Eagles, I believe?
The Fighting Eagles.
The Fighting Eagles, okay.
That's right. I was a first lady.
Okay. All right, and I don't want to date you, so if you're uncomfortable with that, I'm pretty sure you're proud of your age and
yeah,
and
I came out class of 72.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure did.
I went to Massillon Washington High School. I guess the last part of my sophomore year and my junior and senior year, and I just have vivid memories of Massillon facing Cleveland football teams, and unfortunately for the Cleveland teams that came down to Massillon, they kind of got obliterated with one exception, and that was Cleveland.
Oh, wow.
Cleveland Benedictine.
Oh, yes.
My senior year, we struggled to a 0-0 tie. But that same year, we played Cleveland East, and we beat them 67-0.
Oh, good grief.
Yeah, so.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so anyway, great memories, though. So you went to University of Cincinnati. You came back to Cleveland. You got a nursing diploma from St. Vincent's Charity Hospital, and then you went into nursing full-time?
I did. I went into nursing full-time. I started off with general med-surg floors. Then I went to a neuro floor, which had all types of neurological problems that ranged from severe stroke patients, people who had neurosurgery, and even including patients who came in DTs or delirium tremens, which was alcohol withdrawal. Those were some real interesting ones.
Mm.
hmm
Okay.
Then went to the surgical ICU, which was one of my favorite places to work. Um, I did some dialysis. I did some floating across the city, at various other hospitals. I didn't stay at one hospital. I always worked for an agency so I could make extra money. So I did like Lakewood. I did Lake County West, Deaconess, the old Deaconess Hospital, lots of places.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Okay, so you were pretty much all over the city then.
Yep.
Okay. I'm curious how you go from wanting to have a career as a singing professional and ending up as a nurse. Was nursing something that you had ever really considered, or you just kind of fell on it?
Nursing was Plan B. That's interesting that you asked that because as much as I liked performing and still like performing, what I realized was that performance was a different type of healing modality. Nursing had its healing aspects from a medical perspective, but singing also and music also has a very profound healing effect that's documented in research. So they were very different. Um, I don't know as I look back and I look at my personality and my insecurities and my little idiosyncrasies, I'm not sure that I really was ready to be a full-time performing artist for a number of reasons. So I think nursing was a good thing, even though it was my second choice. I really enjoyed it, especially my last several years, 20 years or so, as a school nurse. That was extremely interesting and funny.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, yeah, they're both healing arts.
Yes. So I'd have to imagine then, since you looked at both of those things from a healing perspective, that nurturing is part of your makeup.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
S-
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
you get into this nursing career and you're in hospitals and you're around people who are bleeding and things coming out of this end and that end. My mother is a retired registered nurse, so I've heard a few horror stories from her. But what was it like for you to have that exposure to the human condition?
That's interesting because in the book that I just wrote and released or published, I self-published in November of 2019. Hood Medical. This is why I sing. I wrote some stories in there. I shared some because, well, I could. The stories are like at least 20 years old, and yeah, and I changed up some of the genders and whatnot, but yes, I saw the most profound thing that I saw was an open heart patient who had an infection and they could not close her chest when she got done with the surgery. She had to come to us with her chest open. And we used to recover the patient from the OR. They did not go to the recovery room. They came to the SICU. This was at the old Mount Sinai hospital that's not there anymore. So she comes in, and this happened every once in a while. We get an open chest to come. But this particular lady, for whatever reason, somebody had come up with the idea of pouring granulated sugar into her chest as a means of diverting the bacteria from her tissues around her heart to the sugar. Well, they said, "Oh, well, we'll pour sugar in there, and then the bacteria will go to the sugar instead of her, heart and chest cavity tissues." And we're thinking, okay. So we poured this measured amount of sugar into her chest, looking at her beating heart, and I'm thinking, ooh, look at that. Then we would rinse it with normal saline, and then we were all suited up. You think coronavirus, suiting up is something. We had to be suited up for that because, you're putting stuff in somebody's chest. So we would put it in there. We'd squirt it up. We'd let the sugar melt, because the body temperature was going to melt it. Then we'd squirt it up and suck it all out with this water pick type thingy and pack it with saline soap gauze. And we would do that. I don't know if it was once or twice a day, but anyway, it took two of us to do it. That was one of the most profound things. That's in the book because it was just like, okay, people, do you know that sometimes the nurses and doctors are actually looking inside your body? Your body is like gaping open because it has to heal, and that's the best way it can heal. So, yeah, I saw some stuff.
Mm. Well, I have to ask, after hearing that description of your task, did she make it?
Actually, she did. She made it, and she came back to visit us a few months later, walking on her own, because she wanted to show us that she was fine, and she wanted to say thank you, but she really wanted to show us what she said what our work did, but what our work and God's work did, because that was deep. But yeah, she came back and visited us, walking on her own. I can picture her now.
Wow.
She sure did.
That's amazing. So you worked at all these hospitals, and then you ended up in the Cleveland school system as a nurse. Describe how that happened.
Oh, boy. Okay, here we go. So in addition to the nursing and the music, I also received initiation/rites of passage in the system of Ifa. And Ifa is a traditionalist practice of out of West Africa, out of Southwest Nigeria, to be specific. Long story short, I was told that nursing, hands-on nursing like that, really was not what I came here to do. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I done spent this money to go to nursing school. My parents spent this money to send me to college. What the heck you mean I'm not supposed to be a nurse like that? So I, at the time, was working dialysis, and that was a whole nother issue. Long story short, what I've learned over the years is if you don't do God's bidding, whatever that perspective that is for you, if you don't do it, you're going to get snatched. So long story short, I got snatched out of that position, and I was so traumatized that I just was like, okay, I need to sit out for a minute and think about some things. Now, the thing was, I could still practice nursing. I was fine, but I was just traumatized. So I stopped, and the next thing I knew, I got an offer to work as a school nurse, which was not that level of clinical nursing. Okay, so I was not going to be working an intensive care unit. I was not going to be working with open chest, with wound care, all like that. I was going to be working with children who were in a school setting that was a lot less intense. That's how that happened. So once I got into the school system, I stayed there until I retired last year.
Okay.
June of 2019. Mm-hmm.
All right. We're going to probe something that you brought up a few moments ago. I can't just let it slide by that quickly. So we'll get into it a little bit deeper when we come back from this break. You're listening to Open Door Cleveland. I'm Vince Robinson, and I'm talking to Barbara Barrett, who does a number of things, and we are uncovering some very interesting things about her. We'll get more into Barbara Bennett when we come back. I'm sorry, Barbara Barrett. I'm thinking of the former superintendent.
Yes.
You got confused with her a few times, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. We'll be back with Barbara Barrett right here on Open Door Cleveland right after this. We're back on Open Door Cleveland with Vince Robinson, and I'm talking to Barbara Barrett, and she just told us how she came to be a school nurse, and what led up to that was her initiation She mentioned Ifa, and I would like to make that clearer to those who are in the listening audience, what that is and what it has meant for you.
Okay, Ifa is a traditionalist practice. It's a part of a total cultural system for the Yoruba people of Southwest Nigeria. And I say culture because it includes activities of daily living. It's not just a quote-unquote religion. It's all of that. It's how they live. It's how they view the world or their cosmology. It's their theology. It's their belief system. I've had the blessing to be able to go to West Africa 4 times, once to Ghana on a tour, but the other 3 times I stayed with elders in Nigeria so that I could learn and or receive initiation/rites of passage. Also went to Cuba for the same reason, even though the practice is slightly different in Cuba. The bottom line for us ancestrally as African Americans is that there are parts of our ancestry that we are not as familiar with because it was erased from our memory. So even though I still do affiliate with church, because that's part of my ancestry too. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater necessarily. Even though that's the case, I am still a student practitioner of Ifa and have been for pretty much the last 30 years. So, and there is benefit to that. It has been tremendously beneficial to me. So that's just how I'm wired, and it works for me.
Okay, you kind of led me into the question, how do you or how have you benefited from it?
I have benefited from it because of the method of practice, which includes fairly regular consultations on a spiritual level. Let's just say that the theology includes sacred liturgy that is divided into compartments or books or sections. And when you go for a consultation, the way that your elder looks at your problem and asks the question, the answers are addressed through the sacred liturgy. And a lot of what is answered has to do with behavior changes or events that are coming up or situations that you're dealing with. Those types of things are things that you can get answers to. That does not mean it's going to fix your life. It doesn't mean that, because we still as humans have to go through certain things, but it can mean, and from my perspective has meant, that the path can be made easier or easier to navigate, let's just say, even when there are negative things that we have to navigate. So that's the best way I think I could put it.
Okay. So in terms of your transition from working in a hospital to working at a school, for instance, you got some spiritual guidance that created a change in your life. So you would say that you got the benefit of that guidance and it served you well. Yes.
And I'm going to say that I think what the problem was, or what the challenge was, which is why they originally told me not to be in nursing, that I was not to be in nursing in the manner that I was because I was working in such intense surroundings that required a lot of machinery, that required a lot of synthetic medicine, that required a lot of things that required dependence on data. Now, don't get me wrong. All of that is important and has its place. There are certain types of medicine that if I need to take it, I'm going to be taking it. There are other types that I'm going to be side-eyeing that and thinking, I don't know if I want to take that. I would like to try to do an alternative method on that. But you can't advocate that if you're working under those types of conditions. So now, fast forward to the school system. We could only give out the medication that the student had a prescription for, that they brought to the school, that was signed by their doctor, and they brought the medicine. That was that. We didn't just massively give out pills, or, we weren't doing all sorts of things. Although there's been an increase in the number of type 1 insulin-dependent diabetic children across the board. So there started to be a lot of children on insulin, a lot of children who had to be monitored for that. But that's a little different. There are also children on tube feedings. There are children that have colostomies or ileostomies, and the children got issues.
Wow.
But it was not the same.
That's amazing to me
to
hear young folks going through all those things that you normally associate with being adults. I mean, why would you think that children have higher rates of diabetes than they did long ago?
I don't know. I talked to a couple of parents, and some of them several parents. I know a couple of them felt guilty because they felt as though they somehow contributed to it through their diet, and they passed that kind of chemical imbalance or dysfunction off to their children. I can't really say, but especially for type 1, because that means your pancreas isn't working well to secrete the insulin that the body normally secretes. Type 2 is a little more easy, is a little easier to control because it's not insulin dependent, type 1. But I don't know. I know that one thing, though, a lot of children don't deal with it well. There are some that are angry because they have to take insulin. They don't want to. Yeah. So I found that working with children for me was just as rewarding because I had to help them deal with the things that they were dealing with, whether it be problems at home, whether it be insulin-dependent diabetes or asthma or obesity or whatever that was.
Yes, and so in essence, you were still able to fulfill your nurturing aspect. Yes. So I want to go back to Africa and find out from you what it was like for you to be there for the first time, and what you found out about it that you weren't aware of before you went.
Oh, that's interesting. Each time I went to Africa, they were good experiences. I did not have any bad experiences in West Africa at all. I think one thing that I did not realize was when I went to Ghana, the metropolitan nature of Ghana. Even in Lagos is kind of, they have these pictures that the media, and we need to, especially as African Americans, we need to get beyond that, believing what the media tells us, because it's not true. They would have us think that everybody's in huts and all that kind of stuff. No, that's not true. They have skyscrapers. I got pictures of them. I took pictures of a lot. And then they have the rural areas where the people are walking with whatever they're carrying on their heads. There's all of that there, all of it.
Right.
So I think one thing that a lot of people who go may not be prepared for is that their electrical infrastructure is not dependable. The electricity may go off at any time, and you don't know if it's coming back on in an hour or 4 hours or 5 hours or whatever that is. But, for me, I went camping as a child every summer. So I didn't care if the lights were off. I didn't care if we washed up out of a bucket because they draw water from the well. I didn't care. I just didn't care. I didn't care if we cooked the food on a fire with wood, because we used to do that. And that's kind of the way I'm wired. I enjoyed it.
Yes. So it wasn't the traumatic experience that others would assume you would have if you went to the continent after not ever being there before.
No, it was not. The worst thing that happened was the last time I went. It's funny because the elders told me in one of my readings, as consultations, do not use the local sponge, which was basically a raffia, one of those raffia things that you can get in the drugstore. They said, don't use that. Just use water until you get home. Because they were telling me there was something going on with me medically. Sure enough, when I got home, I had a fever. I had these little breakouts on my arm. And I'm thinking, what is this? Of course, now, you know me, I'm the nurse, and I'm a really bad patient. And honestly, I can say this now. I didn't want to go to the hospital to see what it was, because I didn't want, they asked me, have you been out the country? Then I'd been quarantined. So I'm like, okay. I had this bottle of Bactrim that I had set on one of my altars because I had done the wrong thing, and I was on the Bactrim and this other medication. I started them at the same time. I tell people don't do that, because if you start something new and you start two of them at once, if you're allergic to one, you don't know which one it is. So I put the Bactrim on the altar for whatever reason. I put it there, and I did the other one. I think I was allergic, kind of had a reaction to the other one. But when I came back, I said, ooh, Bactrim is a broad spectrum antibiotic. Let me see if I can wipe it out with that. So I took it. I had no problems, and it was gone within a week. Now, that's the wrong thing to do, people. I'm telling you, don't do that. But I did it because I've been a nurse for so long.
Okay.
That was the worst thing that happened. And one of my doctor friends later said it probably was MRSA, which is methicillin-resistant Staph aureus. So that's probably why the Bactrim worked. But that worked out. That was the worst thing that happened to me. I had nothing else bad happen.
Okay, so it could have been avoided had you listened to the guidance that you had been given.
No, I did listen. I don't know where I picked it up from. I don't know where it came from. But I listened to what they said, and I didn't use the local sponge. I just, would go with water.
Okay.
And when I got back home, I dealt with it, but I dealt with it myself.
Okay.
Kind of.
All right. Well, I'm sure it was a small price to pay for everything that you got from that trip and the others that you've made to the continent. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come back. You're listening to Open Door Cleveland with Vince Robinson. I'm talking to Barbara Barrett, and we'll be right back after these words from WOVU 95.9 FM, a Burtonville Park community radio station. We're back with Barbara Barrett on Open Door Cleveland with Vince Robinson, and we have been on the continent of Africa. You said you went to Nigeria 3 times, and you also went to Ghana.
Yes.
Lagos was probably more than you ever could have imagined, and I'm sure Accra probably lived up to your expectations.
Yes, they were wonderful trips. I would like to go back. I'm sure I will go back at least one of them, if not both. the experience that I remember the most in Ghana, aside from the slave dungeons, because I refuse to call them castles, I went to Elmina, and that was an interesting trip, especially given that the vultures still congregate on the beach near Elmina, because what the locals told us was that they got so used to the carnage that that's just where they went, and they're still going there to this day.
So you're talking about epigenetic programming for some vultures.
Right, exactly.
Wow.
But the other good part, the thing that I'll never forget, was I was riding in the tour bus, and I was sitting next to the window, and we were at a stop, and a lady walks by. She was kind of an elder lady, because that was a while back, and she stopped and she looked at me and she said, "Akwaba, welcome." Mm-hmm. And I thought, I nodded to her, and I said thank you, because I didn't know how to say thank you in Twi or whatever.
Madasi.
But okay, Madasi. I just was that. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that.
Yes. It sounds like it was a message that was intended specifically for you.
Yes. Yes. Because she didn't have to stop next to that bus and tell me welcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I've had the experience of going to both Elmina and the Cape Coast slave dungeons. And honestly, the one that had the most profound impact on me was Cape Coast. I went to Elmina first, and it was like I was just there. You know, some people go and they talk about the smell and, you know, other things about it. And it's a very dingy, you know, it's just not a very pleasant place to be. But it just didn't affect me. But when I went to Cape Coast and I stood in that sacred area and the priest was making his prayer and pouring the libation, it came over me all at once. And then I was in the female slave dungeon reading a letter to the ancestors that I was instructed to write before I got there. And when I did that, the same thing happened. I've been back several times, and it seems like every time I go to that Cape Coast dungeon, you know, the same thing happens. It's like somebody's there waiting for me to greet me. But it's a very profound experience. But beyond that, Ghana just has so much diversity in terms of the people and in terms of the different things that you can experience. The number one tourist attraction there is the Kakum rainforest. Did you make that journey?
No, I did not make that journey.
Okay. But you did you stay at Coconut Grove?
I stayed in, where were we? Accra. I don't remember the hotel we were in, but I got another brief story if I can share it.
Absolutely.
You know, people are going to think this lady she'll just do anything. That's not quite true. But I knew when I went, before I left Cleveland, I said, I have to go and greet the traditionalist shrines there, because I'm already a priestess of Oshun. I had made, you know, my initiation in Nigeria. And I said, okay, I gotta greet the traditionalist, somebody's altar. So I kept talking about it. Finally, the tour bus driver said, I know someone who can take you, you can greet his. So this guy comes, Nana Abbas, who turned out to be rather, not famous, but pretty, you know, prominent in the United States. And he comes to the hotel, and I leave and go with him. Now, we're in Accra. He's in Kumasi. So we ride to Kumasi. It's just me and him. And I don't know any Twi. He knew a little bit of English. He wanted to know, how did I know to go to the shrine? And I said, I just felt that I needed to do it. My ancestors were telling me. So we get to his house in Kumasi, and his wife is very accommodating, and they served me soda on this silver tray and everything, and they showed me some videos of some of the stuff they did. And I guess when he was convinced that I was sincere, he unlocked his shrine door and let me come in and say prayers. When I was done, and I left I think I had some gin and some cola nut or something. When I was done, he locked it back up. We got in the car. He brought me back to the hotel. Now, would I do that today? No. Because, and when I think about it, I thought, fool, you were out of your mind. You just were thousands of miles away from home, getting a car with a stranger. But you know what? I had enough faith. I knew that the ancestors were I knew they had me covered, and I knew I could not go to Ghana without greeting them in a way that I felt was proper. And now, I didn't know then, but it seems as though my father's people were Ghanaian. On my mother's side, a cousin of ours did research and found that they were Yoruba. And then we got some Cherokee Native American. But, I did that. And no, I would not recommend that to anybody.
Yes.
But I did.
Okay.
And I'm here to talk about it.
Well, I think you talked about being guided by spirit to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So if the ancestors are looking out for you, as long as you're following instructions, you're okay.
Yes. And I did.
Yeah. I had not a similar experience, but I have something that's relatable to that. The last time I was there by myself after the entire group had left. I was the only person left, and I stayed at a guest house for the Kwame Nkrumah Institute or University of Science and Technology. I'm about 20 minutes from the airport, and I had to spend the night, with no one to reach out to. And the way things happened, I could just tell that I was being watched over. So somebody befriended me. He made sure that my belongings were secure. I just met this brother on the street. He took me to his place. I left my stuff there. I left like $1,200 in a briefcase and came back to it, and it was there, and I didn't really have worry about that. We think of crime through a different perspective here in America. It's automatically assumed if you put something out at night, when you come back the next day, it's going to be gone. But,
right.
But it's just different there. And I wish that people here could experience that for themselves. It's just two different worlds. And it's not to describe it as a paradise or a utopia or anything like that. Like you said, the electricity goes off sometimes, and sometimes it's off for 5 minutes. Sometimes it's off for an hour. But, eventually it will come back on, and you just do what you got to do until it does. So. Yeah.
And I'm sure people have had their negative experiences. I'm sure they have. But like you were saying, and like I was saying, both of us had this push to do whatever we were doing. And I was not afraid at all. Not at all. And I remember when we were coming back, it had gotten dark by then. And we had stopped at what looked like an auto mechanic joint. And I know that the mechanic must have asked Nana who I was, because the next thing I heard was Nana from the United States. So I knew he was talking about me. I just felt as though ancestrally that was something I had to do. And I didn't think about it until I got back. Now, the rest of my traveling party was kind of done because I didn't tell them I was leaving. But the thing was, I didn't want it to be a sightseeing tour. I needed it to be a spiritual journey of sorts,
Right. Yeah, because when you go home, you don't want to feel like a tourist. You want to feel like you belong there.
Exactly.
And that's the way I feel now. I mean, to me, that's home. This is just a place that I live. But, when I was standing at the airport about to come back to Cleveland, I had tears coming out of my eyes, and I didn't know why until I got back. And then I realized you were crying because you had to leave home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, so yeah, and I'm sure that that was a fantastic journey for you. How are you feeling now that we're not able to go?
Um, Honestly, I'm feeling like this is a good time to save some money so I can make sure I can get on the next plane whenever it's available. And I think it'll open back up. I think it will. I don't know how, and I'm glad that I went the times that I went.
Yeah, well, our friend Mama Fossey, she left last year, and
Yes,
I don't think she could have timed it any better than she did.
right, exactly,
Yes, and she's
exactly.
loving it over there.
Mhm,
Yes.
mhm.
All right.
And I don't know that I want to live there because I have too much family here and I'm close to my family. But I definitely would consider dual citizenship.
Yes. Well, and as it is, you don't even have to have dual citizenship in terms of Ghana. They have something called the right to abode. So you can go over there
Okay.
and stay as long as you need to. The dual citizenship isn't required. So,
Okay.
just something as an FYI for you. So
Mhm.
we're going to leave Africa and we're going to come back to Cleveland and we're going to talk about you and your musician history. When we come back on Open Door with Vince Robinson, talking to Barbara Barrett. We'll be right back. We're back on Open Door with Vince Robinson, and I'm having a very spirited conversation with Barbara Barrett. We have been across the world to the continent of Africa and back, and now we want to talk about her life as a musician. She told us earlier in this interview that she wanted to be a performing artist, but kind of got sidetracked and into nursing. But I'm sure that during the time that you were a nurse, you stayed connected to your musical life. So tell us, what was the genesis of your life as a musician, and where did you go with your career as a musician?
So with music, it started off when I was, I think, 13. And the way it started was at Charles Eliot Junior High School. I was in the chorale, and I remember one year, one of my friends was singing in the solo contest. And I said, "What solo contest?" And she told me, and I said, "Well, I want to sing in the solo contest." So I was too late for that year, but the next year I started singing solo contests, and I sang every year since then, or from then on, even, through high school, as long as they had them. So then when I went to college, I told you how I did that. I sang mostly opera, European classical music. And I had started taking voice lessons at the age of 16 because they were making you wait till you were 16 so that you could, give your vocal cords a chance to mature somewhat. When I came home from college, I joined the Cleveland Orchestra Chorus and the Blossom Festival Chorus, even though my sight reading was horrible. And the reason my sight reading was horrible is because I had stopped sight reading. And if you stop, you run the risk, or I ran the risk of forgetting how to do it. So Robert Page was the director of the orchestra chorus at the time, and he just kind of looked at me like, "You and that sight reading is horrible, but your voice is fabulous." So he let me sing. And that meant I had to work on learning that music. I would leave Mount Sinai at 7:30. Rehearsal started at 7:30. I would get there about 7:45. And they knew that I was running from work most of the time. I'd still have my scrubs on. And I would sit there and sing, and then I would go home. But I sang with the orchestra chorus and the Blossom Festival chorus for several years. Gareth Morrell came in after Robert Page. And then I decided I want to do something different. So I started listening to classic jazz and basically started singing that. Then as the classic jazz venues started to dwindle in Cleveland, I said, okay, I got to sing something else. So I started learning some soul and neo soul and a little bit of R&B, and the blues. So I started singing that. And then I started singing reggae and world music. So I've kind of sung a lot. I cannot sing every single R&B song. I am not an R&B singer like that. I can just sing some of the music. And church music. I like singing church music. I love it. It's a ministry. And I do it a lot, of course, in tribute to God, but also in tribute to my ancestors, my father being number one, because he loved to hear me sing. I remember the look on his face when he first realized that I could sing. He did not want to be at the solo contest at 9:00 on a Saturday morning when he worked all day, all week. But when I opened my mouth and started singing, he was sitting in the back with my mother and my little brother and sister who were carrying. And he just was like, his face lit up. I'll never forget that. So I'm going to sing as long as I can. If not in tribute to anybody else, it would be in tribute to him. And because I have a gift that I need to use. And it's part of the healing arts. It's a healing art like nursing is a healing art. I mean, that's just what it is to me. It's necessary.
So you've mentioned all these different genres that you've been involved with musically. Who have you worked with here in Cleveland that we might know of?
Currently, I'm singing with a group, One World Tribe, that's out of Erie, Pennsylvania. That's world music and reggae. And I work with a smaller group called Ikembe that there's a rhythm section. Sometimes we have a saxophone player. Sometimes we have a guitar player. And we do a lot of classic jazz and some pop and some soul. Just, it depends on the song. I kind of pick the song versus the genre because, like I said, I cannot sing every song. My voice is not suited for it, especially with an operatic background. So I choose certain songs to sing that'll fit my voice. Blues are good for me. I have sung once with Forecast, once with Hub's Groove, with a couple of other groups as background vocals, because I'll sing background. I don't have a problem with that. I'm trying to think. Jesse Dandy and Jerome Saunders, the three of us used to roll around as a trio quite a bit, but that was years ago when Fatfish Blue was open and when Club Isabella was at the original location. Places like that. And then I would, sing with my own band. I had my own group that I would get together. So.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So your musical journey started with opera?
Yes, it was European classical music, opera, Debussy, Mahler, Puccini. Those, and I like it. Okay. I like the Impressionists. I like the Impressionist era. Mm-hmm.
Well, it just goes to prove that we're not monolithic as a people.
Nope.
I mean,
we are not.
Opera probably would not be the first choice of a lot of people who have an affinity to music, but for whatever reason you were drawn to it and you immersed yourself in it.
I did.
Yeah. And you said something else that I found interesting, and that was the idea of being a vocalist having to sight read. So you're saying that you would have to be able to look at that sheet of music, see the note on the staff wherever it was, and identify that note and sing that note in the perfect pitch that was.
You know written. What? Yes. And I'm going to give you an example. I just shared this on Facebook. It was an experience from last year when I went to New York. And there's an elder there, jazz elder, who's I think he's 89, Barry Harris. Mm-hmm. He's an oh my goodness. Somebody told me, okay, you got to go to Barry Harris's workshop on Tuesday evening. So I said, okay, we'll go. I was with a young lady that I had just met. We were hanging out. We went to that workshop. It was fabulous. And he had us standing up there sight reading, the singers, one by one, sight reading this music. Then he called me up at the end. He said, where's that lady from Cleveland? And I'm not paying attention. I'm on my phone or something. So I ended up going up there, and he literally walked me through one of his original songs. He was telling me the words, and I had to listen to the piano and get the melody. That's how he teaches. And I have not had a chance to go back. I want to go back to his workshop so bad because he teaches the improv for jazz.
He's still with us?
Yeah, the last I heard, he was still with us. His music is beautiful, but yeah, he will teach you. Vocalists have to be responsible for sight reading also. Yep.
Yes.
I did pretty good that day. It wasn't a disaster.
Word on the street is if you want to work in the recording industry at a certain level, you have to be able to sight read. And if you can't, you're not going to get the job.
Yes, that I can see where that's true. Sight reading helps. It does, and it speaks to a level of training, which I'm saying this carefully because I certainly don't want any musician who may be listening to think that if you can't sight read that you aren't a good musician. That's not it at all. There are some excellent musicians who play by ear. Excellent, exceptional. But to be able to sight read is a plus.
Yes.
It definitely is a plus.
Well, one of those musicians everyone knows of, and that's George Benson. He doesn't read music, but you listen to him play, you would never know.
Absolutely, because I never knew that.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
I was shocked when I found that out. So now that we're in this strange, precarious situation, and it's put a serious crimp in our ability to perform, how are you navigating this new landscape that we're dealing with as performers?
Well, that's interesting because I did a couple of virtual concerts on Facebook Live. And they were well received. I did them with tracks just by myself. I set it up here because I have the equipment that will allow for that. It's older equipment, but it worked. I would just get my tracks online, or I had a couple of them that I had a musician, particularly Phil Jones, had done for me. So I would play the track and sing to it. And I would usually start on Wednesday for a Sunday evening concert. So I would make sure that it was on point and I wouldn't be, doing crazy stuff while I was live. But yeah, I would do maybe 45 to 50 minutes of music, a variety of stuff, of blues, some pop, some classic jazz, some soul. Just the stuff that was good for my voice. And, so I did that. And when, right before the pandemic really hit, I was blessed to be able to sing Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit for the MAFA production at Olivet.
Okay.
Which I was actually the costumer for that, but I sang that one song.
Okay, so there you go. You're giving us another dimension, a costumer.
Here's this is what happened. So my mother introduced me to the sewing machine at 13. That's just what people were doing. Women were doing that back then. They were teaching their daughters how to sew. So I kind of liked it. And every once in a while I'll costume something. That show wasn't hard to costume because I was basically making clothes that, our people would wear on the plantations, which were simple, really simple.
Okay.
Really simple. And everything else I got from the costume shop. So, but, that was an interesting song to sing, okay. Strange Fruit. That was deep.
We are at the end of our time together, Barbara Barrett. But I want to sincerely thank you for joining us on Open Door. And I know that you have a book. It's called Hood Medical. This is Why I Sing. Quickly, how can people get it if they are interested?
Amazon. Or you can go to my website, which is www.bbeyondcategory.com.
Okay, well, there you have it. Barbara Barrett on Open Door Cleveland. Thanks for joining us. And look forward to future shows where we'll talk to more interesting people such as Barbara. Thanks for joining us today. Know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make it a great day, Cleveland. Peace.
Thank you.